And we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I have two great guests with me that the audience really liked them last time they were on the show for their first time. Today I have with me Geri Cabezudo and Lio, the Pleiadian, with me. Geri and Lio return back to the Typical Skeptic Podcast for a mind-expanding discussion on hidden history, interdimensional contact, and humanity's connection to other civilizations. Geri, she's the founder of soundpath.org, and she's also involved with the natural law community. She's also with the Liberation Academy. She joins Lio, who identifies as a Pleiadian, changeling, and ambassador for a deeper dive into alternative history and consciousness. Topics include the accuracy of human history and the 3D versus 5D perspectives, the Solem Scale and measuring truth beyond physical proof, humanity's interactions with non-human civilizations, Pleiadian influence on human mythologies, Elves, Fairies, Valkyries, and etc., and light abilities and latent human potential. This conversation will challenge everything you think you know about history and reality. And with all that said, I'd like to give them a big warm welcome back to the show. Lio and Geri, thank you guys so much for coming back on. How is everybody?
Feeling awesome. Thank you so much for having us again.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think it could be a very good show to do a few times more. I'm not sure we can cover everything in one shot.
Yeah. And Geri, did you want to start everything off tonight? You said you kind of you wanted to kind of be like the facilitator. That's fine with me. Wherever you want to go with it. Yeah.
Either way, yeah, I am basically just grateful for this opportunity. And, I think we touched on a lot of different topics last time and just sort of going more in depth with those topics. So, a lot of people outside of in the natural law community, in the truther community, they'll often ask me, how do you know that you're actually speaking with an extraterrestrial? Like, what's the proof? What's the history? How do you know this? And we talked a little bit about last time about 5D versus 3D proof, and I've seen craft. I've seen the ships that I've seen have been sort of cloaked or transparent. But yeah, Lio, do you want to talk a little bit more about the struggle of bringing the 5D into the 3D in terms of proof, to share that with our audience?
Yeah, I can. So first of all, to get things from 3D to 5D, it's very easy. The other way around, that's the difficult part. It's basically, we need to imagine if you would have to flatten yourself to speak with a two-dimensional entity. I'm not sure you would survive the journey. And same goes for 5D entities. Now, there are tricks to get it done anyway. So one of those is, like me, changeling. Other ways are channeling. And you can, however, cross the atmosphere at the speed of light and reach the 3D. But as you can imagine, it's a very dangerous thing to do, and so it's not being done often. And there is another problem with it. If you've heard about Roswell incident, that happened when Greys tried that in one of their first few times, and what happened to their ship is that it got flat, like pancake, and everyone inside were dead before they hit the ground.
Right. And so, when we see these ships, how do we know if it's like a leak situation between the 5D and the 3D versus, something, in the 3D, if that makes any sense?
It's hard to tell if it's a leak or not. Yeah, of course, there's also leaks, but they are very random. Well, if it was, usually leaks last a few seconds, like less than 10 seconds. And if you're seeing it for more than 10 seconds, then it's probably that you are seeing craft in the 3D. Thing is that you will probably not see it Pleiadian craft because they are solely in the 5D. You may see sometimes gray ships, which they have crossed over to the 3D, but they're usually cloaked. And you may also sometimes see Andromedan ships because they are 6-dimensional structures, and so they are leaking always. Like you can see them from certain angles.
And you mentioned to me before we went on this podcast about the LA incident, the big craft sighting then. Do you want to talk more about that?
So yeah, that was one of the few Pleiadians who were brave enough to cross the atmosphere at the speed of light. That was Valthor, and he crossed it with his small craft at the speed of light. And when you travel at the speed of light, there are different optical illusions and phenomena. So basically, it was like a silhouette in the sky that when they were able to see it, it was already somewhere else.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, so obviously, you spoke last time, Leo, about how your civilization, like it's about belief until proven otherwise. And I also mentioned the trivium process, how we have to gather knowledge, process it, and sort of share that rhetoric, share that information with the world. But also I touched on the fact that we also have our intuition, our empathy, our emotions, and as a means of gathering information. And do you guys have any other sort of thoughts to that in terms of like gathering knowledge?
I said that before. Proof is very easily fabricated. So the deep state is using it. White hats are using it. You have Blue Beam and Deep Blue projects which are using it. And the best way to really get something to the bottom and really understand is that the fact that lie has limits and it has an agenda. So the truth is neutral. It's not evil, it's not bad, it's based on perspective. And so the best way to really understand if something is a lie or the truth is try to look at it from different perspectives. If from different perspectives you get a different truth, it might be true. And with lies, it's the first question you need to ask yourself is why? Why would I see it? Why would anyone let me see it? And
I was going to say I agree with you, Leo, and to kind of go up what Geri said, and what you said, like Geri mentioned our intuition. Like I think with the veil thinning and like more people coming into their psychic abilities, like our discernment is kind of like off the radar right now. Like I'll just give you an example. Like I just put on this hat when we started the show. This hat has a liner in it. This supposedly it blocks EMF, V2K, and 5G. You know what I mean? But for me, I need that because I feel like I get hit and it messes up my discernment. You know what I mean? But like with this on, I just got it. It's a company called, I don't know, they're not a sponsor or anything like that. It's called I have it over there somewhere. But I mean, it does seem to like I don't know. But like, do you think our discernment is coming more online? Like, or we'll be able to tap into it more, you guys, like with the veil thinning and people being able to tap into psychic abilities more and the awakening, I guess you could call it?
I believe you could. There were times in human history where the veil was so thin that the 5D was kind of merged into the 3D. In the Viking era, that was the case. There was never one Atlantis that was 3D. They were always only 5D, and people interacted with them. It was times where the veil was so thin that the 5D was just looking like a 3D.
Wow. So it was like they had that amount of discernment, that amount of like the veil them that much. Do you think that's what we're going into now, Leo?
It seems that way because the frequency and length of events where people are seeing stuff out there, and even myself, that I'm all of a sudden seeing something that I know it's 5D from a 3D perspective. It seems like the veil is thinning. We used to have an idea why, but it seems like we don't really know what is affecting it.
And how is this affected by the Schumann resonance situation?
Schumann resonance is something completely else. This is the ripple effect of the lightning. It's like when you see lightning, you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. The lightning itself, most of it you cannot see. That's the Schumann resonance, but it does have to do with the interaction between the magnetic field and the Earth's core. So it is more like a sign for something that should happen in the next 5 to 7 years, which is the polar shifts. And the fact that we're seeing lots of Schumann resonance that are very high on the chart is actually a good sign, because the polar shifts can only occur when the Earth has enough energy to actually go through it, and this tells you that there is a lot of energy in the planet. Now, if the polar shifts won't happen, the only next time those polar shifts will have a chance to happen is in 150 years. And in those 150 years that the polar shifts didn't happen, you're going to have catastrophes. Because it's like this is how the Earth fixes itself. So I told someone that asked me before, so what about they say, what do they call it? Global warming. That's bullshit. It's because we're in a solar maximum, and the solar maximum is what charges the Earth in order to do those polar shifts. Now, what we may see is effects that are similar to what they would say the global warming has to do with, if the polar shift will not happen. But it seems like right now that it's going to.
Yeah, I would say I'll just give you like an idea, like where I was coming from with that. Like I've always thought global warming was kind of bullshit, and like how I've been able to gauge it, Leo. It's like this is where I'm at with this. Like I live in like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it's like it used to be like I know it's like it's known for like being like somewhat cold here, like most of the year around. We get maybe 4 or 5 months, but like those like 4 or 5 months we would get that they used to be really hot. We would get really hot summers when I was a kid. Like it'd be like 80, 90 degrees, and gradually as I got older, the winters got colder. You know what I mean? Like if we were in global warming, things would have probably gotten warmer, but it seems like we've almost stepped into like a mini ice age or something like that, where it seems like we might be heading towards a mini ice age. Do you think that's a little bit too aggressive, or do you think that we could be headed for something like that?
No, that has to do with weather engineering.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
They have started recently. They found a perpetual element which is very, very unstable, and that's what they're putting up there in the skies. And the problem is that when you use it once, it is actually lighter than air, and it takes about 100 years for it to actually come down to the ground. So every time you use it, and let's say you cause a certain weather phenomenon, that's going to be the case every year.
Yeah, and like I used to listen to Art Bell when I was a kid. If you guys don't, I don't know if you guys used to listen to Art Bell, but I mean, like he, back in the '90s, and he was talking about HAARP back then. So like if they were talking about HAARP, being a weather modifying technology in the '90s, I can't even imagine what they had. I know Eric Hecker, he worked at the Alaska. Well, I'm trying to think what it is, but it's like it was like some. Oh man, this is escaping me. If someone in the audience knows, but if you look up the whistleblower Eric Hecker, me and him don't really get along. But he worked at like this site station in Alaska, and he was working on the neutrino thing. And he said they had this like weather modification machine up there. Like, have you guys heard this story? Do you know what I'm talking about, or no?
Yes, it's that specific weather machine is not human technology, and this has to do with malevolent aliens that are trying to change the Earth environment to fit their needs. They
Wow.
need colder weather.
Yeah, and we mentioned them before, that malevolent civilization. If people look up DJINN, Jinn, otherwise known as the Shadow People. And yeah, maybe this could be an opportunity for us to jump into the topic of the Solem Scale, which is a sort of like, on Earth, we have the Kardashev scale, right? To sort of like judge a civilization's progress. But what's interesting about the Kardashev scale is that it doesn't take into account morality. And I think we talked last time about this, but if um, humans decide as a collective to be objectively moral, we're going to see more and more positive things from that, including freedom for ourselves, but also positive interactions with benevolent civilizations. But do you want to talk about the framework, the Solem Scale framework that your civilization uses, Leo?
Yeah, first I'm just gonna say something about the Kardashev scale. It's wrong in its basis because it is saying that one of the ways for you to find a very advanced civilization is that if you're seeing that engine around the star, I forget the name of it.
The Dyson sphere?
Dyson sphere, yeah. So the Dyson sphere is not something anyone would build because the amount of resources you need to build something like that is something that you can maybe find in the entire solar system. And in order to use it or to even construct it, you need 0-point energy. And when you have 0-point energy, why do you need the sun?
Right.
So you will never see a Dyson sphere. What you will see sometimes are some kind of structures that remind of a Dyson sphere, but they are temporal and they are usually used to create artificial suns. So like in specific systems where the sun is like a white dwarf, they will add another artificial sun into it, and that's where they use the Dyson sphere. But once that that artificial sun is ignited, then it basically eats that Dyson sphere as its first.
Yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy theories, Leo, about like a second sun and a second moon, and like if you even look on like TikTok and like these don't seem like AI videos either. Like it'll show like pictures of like like people showing like two moons like appearing. Like, is that something your civilization knows about? Are there two suns or are there two moons? And like, I mean, I know there's the moons that are like like that are like far from us or something like that. I think that mean they mean like two suns like in our like solar system or something like that. Or yeah.
So in a way, yes and no. First of all, about the moon, there are two moons. There is the 3D moon and the 5D moon. And sometimes because of the firmament, you can see both. Same goes for the sun. The firmament is a 4.5 dimensional structure, so its reflections are harder to explain. It's not very easy. I mean, I can explain it in equivalentics, but it's going to take me 2 hours at least. It's just an optical illusion, basically.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So back to the Solem scale. Like, what is the Solem scale, and like, what do you guys use it for, and stuff like that?
Okay, so first, you probably know one of the scales that's called density scales. I've heard you use that term before, like fifth density, seventh density, I guess third density, stuff like that. So the density scale is one of the scales. It's not a physical state. It's just like a state where the soul vibrates at a certain speed, and it's usually something that you can use in order to determine the level of, let's call it benevolency of a civilization. So on personal reasons, I don't like that scale too much. Most of the Galactic Federation is using the Solem Scale. The Solem means a solar system. I don't really remember what Solem entirely means, but Sol is a solar system. So the Solem Scale is using 2 ways to try and define the level of intelligence of a civilization, and it is using the sum of both in order to get an idea. So the first column is intelligence level, and this is technological only. So we have the sub-intelligence, which is something like, you can call it Roman Empire, and over to the cavemen. Semi-intelligence is where humanity is right now. Ando-intelligence is usually where you become interstellar. Super-intelligence is where you start with portals and ability to live forever and self-replicating cells and the 0-point energy. Then there is number 5, ultra intelligence. This is where you start building 6-dimensional structures and portals through space. And then 6 is quantum intelligence. This is where you can actually kind of create life from scratch. And then the 7th one is omni-intelligence, which we don't really know what it could be. The other column is the way the society thinks. And this is going by the majority and the ruling class. So the first one is survival. This is, well, the next level is sentient. Sentient is where humanity, when you move from tribes to a civilization, that's when you move from sentient to personal ego. This is where humanity is right now. Then there is the ascension phase, which is where humanity is starting to be. And then there is the number 5, social ego. This is where most of the Pleiadians are. Number 6 is transcendence, and number 7 is collective. So right now, the Nordic Pleiadians are in the 6.5, and that makes them the most advanced in the galaxy because 6 times 5 is 30. So let's say Atlan is in the ascension phase, and they're also ultra intelligent, not quantum intelligence, which means they are 5 times 4, 20. The Galactic Federation is also at ascension, but they are in the quantum intelligence, so it's 6 times 4, 24. Greys are also in personal ego, and they're also in quantum intelligence, which means this is 6.3. 6 times 3 is 18, which means they are, although they live much longer, and they became interstellar over 2,000 years ago, because their society is very, I might say they might even be below personal ego, somewhere in sentient, but okay, it is known as 6.3. Even though they are 2,000 years interstellar and their technological levels are one of the most advanced in the galaxy, their society is not advanced. So this is why I prefer the Solem scale, while density scales only speaks about social level. The Solem scales takes into account the social level and the technological level.
I love this framework because it just makes sense. Like you can be technologically advanced, but just completely selfish as a society, which is kind of us.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. I was seeing what else we were going to cover tonight. This is fascinating stuff, though. This is really good. And if you guys have any questions for Geri or Leo in the audience, put them in the chat. And what about humanity's? We were going to touch on humanity's interactions with non-human civilizations, or how about this one? This would be even better. The Pleiadian influence on human mythologies. That would be really cool to hear about.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, like I said in the last meetup, Atlantis is not a name of a city. It's a name of a certain type of settlement, which is basically a colony with over 500,000 people that is established away from the borders of the known Atlan Empire. So every colony like that, colonies in space, colonies on the home planet, colonies on Earth, they are all called Atlantises. And as far as we know, there were 7 in history. Atlans, they like to keep to themselves. So the level of interactions with humans is very minimal. Nordics, on the other hand, they don't give settlements names, and also they try not to build segregated settlements. They try to integrate with the local population. So they had interactions with Mongolians, they had interactions with the Mayans, they had interactions with one of the most recent ones are in the Irish and the Viking era. So it's the Vikings were divided into 2 groups: the Danish Vikings and the Norwegian Vikings. The Norwegian Vikings were kind of a lost cause because they had this kind of habit of hunting their neighbors, and they just attacked each other. But the Danish ones were more sophisticated, and they were in contact with the Pleiadians. And so one of those influences is something called the Valkyrie. So Valkyrie are not legend. This is, it used to be the official army of the Nordics. And these were, it was made only by women because they had an elastic armor made of metal that does not exist on Earth. And that elastic armor looked like wings, but they weren't wings. They were not giving them flight abilities. They did have jetpacks, which gave them flight abilities. Those elastic wings, though, they were only being able to mount on women due to the structure of the bones in the back, because they were implanted. And males it was just not possible. So that's why it was made by women only. Eventually, they got more advanced. We're talking about, I think, maybe 800 years ago. So they're not using that armor anymore. So today it's kind of equal. But Valkyrie is used to this day as the official army of the Galactic Federation.
And
So
you were also going to talk about the Cedars. Obviously, we don't know too much about them. We call them the Anunnaki. But what is your civilization know of the Cedars?
Wait, so you want me to jump to the Cedars and then back to influence of Pleiadians?
Oh, either way, whatever you want to do, Leo.
Okay, so I'll just finish with another one. In the Irish era, they were known of a certain race called Fairies. Oh, by the way, in the Viking era, they called the Pleiadians not the Valkyrie, but all the rest, Norns. And actually, this is the same name that we use today. It's just Nordic is easier to pronounce, but we still say Norns. But in the Irish era, they were called Fairies. That's also Pleiadians. And Fairies is a Pleiadian word. It's not a human word. And it is just the way they would pronounce the initials of FER, which is a mix between two Pleiadian races that eventually became standard. And so it was between the Tauron and the Raps, and then the mix between them is FER, which is pronounced Fairy or Fairy.
I wasn't planning on
let's see.
talking. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I'm curious if you know anything about the Rendlesham Forest incident, because I was researching that incident, and some of the contactees from that incident reported that when they touched the ship, they got a download that there was this invisible island offshore to the sort of west of Ireland where these people came from, and that it was like a sort of like an island that one could not see, and the people looked really young, and that they were in a sort of like in these orbs. Do you know anything about this?
Yeah, it's probably Pleiadian.
Mm.
There is still on the 5D parallel Earth Terra, there is a colony of Pleiadians mounting to about 5 million people. So it's and since we have the technology of cell regeneration, cell assembler, you can look like you're in your 30s when you're 180. So that's why everybody looks young.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating. Holy shit! Like, yeah, it's so cool how much you know about all the different ET races and stuff. So I guess Geri wanted to touch on the Cedars next. Like, what do we know about the Cedar races, Leo? And do you think it's like what people like Elena Danaan talk about, like, or do you think it's more advanced than that, or like, I don't know. I'm kind of just kind of. I mean, I've read the Sumerian tablets. I've read those for sure. So I know a lot about that, and I know a lot about. I've read some of Sitchin's work too, but yeah. So wherever you want to go with that,
So the truth is that we don't know a lot about the Cedars. They vanished 40,000 years ago, and they left their mark in many planets, and that's why we know they exist. But they usually left a negative mark. So gold is, you can ask any astrophysicist, they will tell you gold is one of the most abundant materials in the universe, but on Earth, it's rare. Why? The Cedars. And that's the case in every planet they invaded. So they mine the gold because gold is that super perpetual element that I was talking about, that humanity's overlords found and use it for weather modifications, but it is used for so much more. It is used for self-levitation capabilities, electromagnetic propulsion, traveling through space, getting things faster than the speed of light, 0-point energy, lots of things you can do with it. And that's why the Cedars mined the crystallized gold. And so and I believe that in the tablets they also said that they needed the gold for their atmosphere or something, but actually they probably needed it to power their ships. And so so that's the mark they leave, and also usually a scar on the planet. And in Earth's case, that's the Mariana Trench, which expeditions that went through the Mariana Trench will tell you that the sides of the Mariana Trench seems like they were almost made because they're too steep to be formed naturally. So this is the mark, as far as we know, that they left on humanity. Now, because they vanished from the galaxy 40,000 years ago, we don't know when exactly they invaded Earth. And people say that they have messed with human DNA. And what we have to say about that is they may have messed with a certain group, but we're talking at least, let's say, 50,000 years ago. Even if that was the case, it's already blended with all of humanity. So it's kind of that engineering or whatever that's gone, or natural selection eliminated it.
Huh. That's interesting. So it's not in our DNA anymore. You're saying? Pretty much.
Not really. No.
Well, almost like how like but like I was going to say like Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal got eradicated, but they're still finding some of that a little bit in our DNA. Like, you know, what about this, Leo? Do you think like the past civilizations were a lot more technologically advanced than what we're being told in history books?
Yes. First of all, you have two famous ones, Tartaria and Khazaria. Tartaria was definitely more advanced than what we have today because they had wireless electricity, and we also believe they had 0-point energy as well. Khazaria, there isn't much left from both Tartaria and Khazaria. We don't know much about those two, but we believe they may have came to some kind of a conflict on global domination, and they just destroyed each other. And we did find like one of the relics of Khazaria that it was a self-propelling tank. So this is also something that is not in current human technological advancement. And by the way, both of them were human. Before that, in Egypt era and the Mayan era, it was a hybridized colony made from Andromedans and humans. And the pyramids are not tombs, they are engines or like reactors. One of those, the Giza pyramid is like an emergency reactor. It's a 0-point energy one. I believe it was never actually used. And the other ones, the smaller ones, are harnessing the geomagnetic energy of that is coming from the spin of the Earth.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. Geri, did you have anything you wanted to follow up on that, or?
Oh, and
Oh,
obviously,
by the way, before I continue to the next part, it's important to take everything that I say like with a grain of salt and look for kind of proofs. So I can just send you to questions that you can ask yourself. There are like black lines inside those pyramids, which are not part of the graffiti and colorful artistic way that we see on columns around Egypt. They are just black lines that look like maybe wires of some sort. Also that there are like remnants of water residue, and through carbon dating, you can see that the direction of the water on the Giza pyramid was not downwards, it was upwards. So go look for that. I know that there is proof out there. I've seen it before in Gaia, I think. So, just start asking questions. That's how you get to the truth.
and Leo, I had a question before we went live where in my research on the topic of humanity's interaction with other civilizations, I was I forget where I read or heard this, but that the alpha draconian reptilians were the ones to introduce the caste system to humanity, the social hierarchies. But you were saying that in your research it's different.
As far as we know, there was no hierarchy to Alpha Draconians. They were all equally sadistic assholes. So they were just hunting and eating everything that moves. They went extinct not long ago. I think maybe 40 years ago, and the one that would probably have introduced hierarchy to humans are the Atlants, the Atlantis. They're using hierarchy to this day.
And then we also mentioned the shadow people last time a little bit. And do you want to go into that?
So the shadow people are, regarding the shadow people, they are considered the lowest density entity possible. And in that specific case, that's where Solem Scale comes short, because if we're looking on the level of their society, then they are a collective, which is number 7, and they are omni-intelligence, which is also number 7, which puts them as the most advanced. But their malevolent level would probably put them somewhere around sentient, or even on survival. The thing is that they are a hive mind, so that's why it can fit with collective, but they are a hive mind biologically. So that's why it could also fit for them to be in survival or sentient. And the shadow people they are called in history lots of things, jinns, demons, bad spirits. They are also the ones causing poltergeists. Most interactions of humanity with demons were actually with these. They possess people a lot, and although it is not very easy to explain how they do it, they also eat souls. Now, a soul is an infinite component, so how can you really eat that? Well, they do it. So we don't really have an answer on how it is physically possible.
Yeah, looks like Rob might have had. Oh, here he's back. Hey, Rob.
Hey.
So yeah, we were just talking about the shadow people, and I had a sort of. I'm reluctant to share my contactee stories publicly because, like I said, not all of them have been positive. But I'll just say that from a very young age, I've interacted with shadow people.
Me too. Me too. I had sleep paralysis when I was a kid, and I used to get the old hag, where she would come and sit on my chest and take away my breath. And then I would also get the Hat Man too, the Hat Man that everybody talks about, I thought it was the guy from the movie Puppet Master, because I'm in my 40s, I grew up in the 80s, and I used to watch old horror movies, and I remembered that movie Puppet Master, and it looked like the Hat. I don't know. That's what I thought. I thought the Hat Man was like the character from Puppet Master. In my, I was a kid. I didn't know any better, But then, when I started listening to Art Bell, I kind of got a better understanding of what they are. I mean, I still don't know if I know completely what they are. It's what happened with you, Geri?
I'm going to share this. I haven't really shared it publicly, but I feel called to do it. To gain trust with your audience and just to live by truth. So, I grew up in a satanic town. If anyone follows Jay Parker's work, any town ending in TON has a coven in it.
Wait, I live in a town with a TON at the end. Like, well, I don't anymore. It's like right near me, and I grew up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't tell me Scranton.
I know it's. I live in a town called. Well, I used to live. I don't anymore. I don't live here anymore, guys. So don't anybody try to like look up my address. But like, I don't mean you, Leo and Jerry. I mean the audience. But I don't think my audience would do that anyway. But I mean, you never know with the internet.
It wasn't Scranton though, right?
Yeah, but I used to live in a place called New Kensington. Now, this isn't to get confused with the crazy place called Kensington in Philadelphia. I live in Pittsburgh. It's a place called New Kensington, and it's still pretty bad. I mean, it was bad growing up there. I mean, it wasn't. I don't know, but I mean, But you're saying, Jerry, that these are satanic towns?
Yes. Well, I'm not saying that. If people follow Jay Parker's work on the One Great Work Network, again, I highly recommend people do not just their ET research, but also their satanic ritual abuse research, especially if you want to understand the shadow people civilization that we're talking about. And so, yeah, so from a very early age, it's kind of hard for me to talk about because
Well, yeah, I mean, whatever you're comfortable with, and if you don't feel comfortable with something, But then what I was going to say was, I definitely want to know about like how these towns are connected and how it's all Luciferian. I'll tell you something I know while you're thinking of what you're going to say. My friend Michelle comes on my show, and she studied the work of Jesse Zevatar. You know who Jesse Zevatar is? She used to be a high priestess in a satanic cult, and she was supposed to be one of the next mothers of darkness. Because like. And then my friend Michelle studied under her because now Jesse's like a reformed Satanist. She's a chaplain and she's, doing the work of God. But like, I guess she's some kind of like, spiritual Christian. I don't know. I don't want to put any title on her. I don't know what really she is, but I know she's, spiritual, let's say. But, she knows the whole satanic or Luciferian hierarchy breakdown. And you're right. That does kind of go into our communities too, because if you're in the MyLab community or you're in the targeted individual community or you're in the SSP community or even the ET contact community, you're going to run into SRA eventually, especially with those, but what my friend Michelle said when she studied under Jesse Debatar, she said that these mothers of darkness, and they have these witches that are in charge called crones, and these crones run different sectors of our planet. So basically, our planet is controlled by Luciferians, basically. I mean, which makes sense because we live in a society that covers up for pedophiles and literally protects pedophiles at the end of the day. You know what I mean? But I mean,
yeah.
So it would make sense that would be a satanic society. You know what I mean? And she told me that some of these like people that we think of, that we know, like Gloria Vanderbilt, she said is a high-ranking mother of darkness or a crone. She said Beyonce is, and she's also said that Obama is the Phoenix, and he's like a high-ranking Luciferian. Like he's like this. Now I have no proof of these people. I don't want to like put name back, but like this is just what I hear. But like supposedly, what I thought was interesting is that she said, and I don't know if this ties into your friend Jay Parker's work, but like that it's like in quadrants and like different like witches control different quadrants. Is that kind of what he talks about as well, or is it different?
So he was part of a satanic bloodline family, and his story is incredible because he went through so much. And I mean, I don't know him personally. I just am a huge admirer of the work that he's done, not just publicly, but on himself. I mean, to go from that experience and just all the horrors of that to be such a just natural law activist now is like, I mean, it's inspirational. I just dropped in the chat also Annika Lucas's work, AnnikaLucas.com, if folks want to check her out. She interviews people that were supposed to be there's one interview that she did with someone who was supposed to be tapped to be a mother of darkness figure. And what's interesting about that ritual for that initiation process is that they don't drug, or it's all voluntary.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
great. That's good.
So I think, and I think a lot of people, and it sounds like you too, Rob, a lot of people that have a sort of light within them, you're going to attract darkness, right? And so, yeah, so I grew up in the satanic town. Um, and like, during recess at school, kids would talk to each other, and like everyone had a haunted house. Like it was just very common to like have poltergeist activity. And one of my friends said, "Oh, not only do we have a haunted house that we live in," and I just chalked it up to like growing up in New England, everything's old, like this is just what happens in New England towns. Um,
Oh, so you're an East Coaster.
yeah, originally, yes.
You're like I'm like East Coast Midwester because like I'm in Pittsburgh, so it's like we consider ourselves, we're like on Eastern time zone, but it's like we're on the western side of Pennsylvania, so it's almost like we're almost in the Midwest, but like New England's really on the coast. That's like on the East Coast for real. Like that's yeah. Did you enjoy growing up there?
I would say yes overall. One thing that I really appreciate about New England culture is the loyalty. Like everyone's brutally honest and loyal, and I really appreciate those values. And people are in New England, you have to deal with shoveling snow, and you just learn to like help each other with each other's driveways, and like it's just, I don't know, I kind of like that stuff, and I like the change in seasons anyway. But yeah, for sure, like I think, and then there's the term mass hole. I'm from Massachusetts, so I can be a mass hole sometimes. um and I also think growing up in Massachusetts specifically, as a Korean American, I sort of had this cultural experience of like East and West, and also being exposed to the American Revolution. Like I literally like lived in the area where that occurred.
I was going to ask you a question though. I don't know if you don't want to answer this. Okay, it's a simple question. I was going to ask you if you had either Italian or Hispanic in your family, because your last name sounds very Italian or very, very Latin American to me. Like, Cabezudo sounds very Italian, it's
Yeah, so both my parents, as far as I know, my lineage is like 100% Korean that I know of. But I did have kids with someone that was Puerto Rican, and there is Italian and Portuguese and Irish heritage involved with that family. But yeah, so it's not my heritage, but
yeah.
and I eventually, with the divorce child custody situation I'm in, I would like to go back to my maiden name, which is that of Kim, which is super common, but
That's a very. I used to work for Kim. When I was in my 20s. This is 20 years ago. I worked at a. We're going all over the place tonight, but this is what's fun about podcasts, and I think the audience loves this stuff too. But like, I worked at a Korean / Japanese fusion restaurant, and the owner's last name was Kim, and he was a really nice guy. They were really nice people, and it was a good experience. It was at that point I didn't know much about Asian cuisine. Like I'm like Lebanese, and my mom's Greek and Italian, and I have Irish in me. So I grew up with a lot of Mediterranean foods. You know what I mean? And so. It was like really interesting at that point to learn about all the different because it was like Japanese and Korean mix. So it was like a fusion. It was pretty cool. And now I love the food. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent.
Oh, no worries. It's great to get to know each other more. And then, Leo is from the Middle East region, and I eat more hummus than he does, which I think is funny.
Where are you at from the Middle East, Leo? If you don't mind me asking.
Think about the second most satanic country in the Middle East.
Would that be Israel?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm Lebanese, so we're like when they name. Well, I mean, I joke around about that. I'm like fourth generation American, which means my family's been here for like I don't even know. I mean, since Ellis Island, but it's weird. Like both my families came over on the boat rush from Ellis Island, and then but my family, I grew up like Christian Lebanese. I was like, I always kind of make that distinction. I don't have anything against Islamic people or anything like that, or any religion, but I just kind of. But now I'm just spiritual. I don't subscribe to any religion.
I barely consider myself human, so obviously not. Yeah.
Like I threw religion out back in I would say before I even woke up. That was one of the things that I never understood religion, and then I having Lebanese heritage and then watching what goes on in the Middle East with the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims always fighting each other, and if you look at Lebanon, for example, in the 70s and 80s, they had a massive civil war between the Muslims and the Christians. The Israelis and the Lebanese fought many times. It's just an ongoing, it's look what's going on right now with Iran. You know what I mean? And it's crazy because Iran has a beautiful culture. I was just watching something about their street food today, about street food in Iran, and it looks so it looks so amazing. And I thought, Jesus Christ, I'm we're bombing the hell out of this country, and these people are absolutely normal. And what's sad is when they show shots of Tehran, they're pulling body bags off the street, and I support the U.S. military 100%. My family was military and all that. My dad was in the Vietnam War. My grandfather was World War II. But still, I don't agree. That doesn't mean I have to agree with war, because I saw how much my dad and grandfather were messed up from it. And that's why they never wanted me to go to the military, and I didn't go, But sorry, I'm telling you guys my whole. That means I'm comfortable with you guys. You guys are really down to earth people. If I can share that stuff. So sorry. Backtrack on what you were saying, Geri. You were talking about the satanic time you grew up in, and and somehow we went off on a big tangent.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so basically everyone in my town growing up, lived in a haunted house, and one of my friends was like, "Do you want to talk to the entity?" And obviously this isn't whatever elementary school language. That's not what they said, the ghost. And so I was like, yeah, I do. That's interesting, And at this point, I had already had the experience of my Catholic priest trying to molest me, and my higher self, I alerted me to run into a bathroom and unlock the door, and he was knocking on the door trying to get me out, and then I refused, and eventually he was like, "Don't tell your parents." And then when he left, I did tell my parents, and they didn't believe me. And that is why to this day I make a point of doing satanic ritual abuse research, because I can only imagine going through hell and then on top of it not being believed. And I could have easily, my parents were very active in their Catholic church community, and so I could have been one of those kids, right? And and so anyway, shortly after that experience, that was sort of my introduction to brainwashing, because my parents didn't believe me when I told them.
I got to ask you one more question. I don't want to go off the subject, but were you a talented kid as well, talented and gifted?
Yes. So at the time growing up, we had what's called the CEE program, where IQ tests were given to all the students. I don't want to publicly share what mine is, but it's rather high. And so all of us were taken out of class, and we were given various mental puzzles to do. And I was taught the trivium from a very young age. I did research articles and would go to the school library and do presentations in elementary school.
Can I ask you a question? Do you ever remember anything weird happening? Because I have survivors, Arkeem Rao comes on my show, he talks about like a lot of people in the MyLab community or the MK Ultra or the even SRA or whatever, like in the fringe community, they talk about the talented and gifted program, that there was some weird stuff that went on. Like, for example, a lot of people remember having to drink like a pink liquid. A lot of people remember being taken out of class and not remembering, where they might have went, or that they were, had psychic experiments done on them. I know this could be reaching. I'm not saying you had any of these experiences, but that's kind of why I led into that. I was seeing if you had anything that you kind of were ever questioned about it or anything like that.
What I'm about to tell you reveals exactly what you described. So I was definitely picked. So shortly after, so I was calling, this is a landline situation. I'm calling my friend to hear the ghost in his house, and I hear this heavy breathing, and they're like, we swear we just left the phone in the room, and the breathing wasn't us, and we write to this entity. And I was like, wow, okay. I was like, can I write to it too? And so the entity followed it to school, and we would write questions on a piece of paper, take the paper and fold it down in the middle of a table. And then shortly after, we would lift the paper back up and something would be written. But the handwriting was very, it was almost like writing with your left hand. And the pencil was very faint. It was, so we would, and it would only answer one word questions. So I'd be like, when did you die? Because we assumed it was a ghost. And it would say whatever, 1770 something or whatever. And this is sort of consistent with, the town we lived in. It was an old colonial New England town. And, I was lonely as a child. I grew up with narcissist parents who were very brainwashed in the medical industrial complex and in the Catholic religion. And so I asked it to be my friend, and it followed me home. And shortly after that, I would, between me and my brother's room, before I would go to bed, I would close my eyes and I would see this minotaur figure pacing back and forth between me and my brother's room. And it was just sort of looming and haunting us. And I would break out into sweats, and and I could just feel it wanting to enter me. And it was just getting worse and worse every night. And this went on for months.
When you say enter you, do you mean enter you your spirit, or enter you sexually?
Enter my body, possess me.
Possess you, okay.
And then eat your soul. That's basically what they do.
Yeah, they eat your soul, yeah.
Slowly, over time, but they do it. That's why they possess.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah, I had an entity attachment as well, and it was recently. I had it for 6 months, and I still have during full moons and stuff. I have what I call flare-ups, where it seems like my bed's possessed or something. It seems like I'll lay down and something will just start moving on the bed, and it seems like it's like an astral snake or something. And it'll just literally start moving, and I'm like, what the fuck? I've tried everything to get rid of this. I've tried 12 different healers. I thought I got rid of it completely, but it, I don't know. When I have connections to every fucking healer, excuse my language, in the community, I've tried everybody, and it's not that I wouldn't recommend these people. I think they're all amazing people, and I would recommend them to everybody. It's like my friend Indigo Angel said. She said to me, you're a special case. She said, I don't know what to do with you. She said, you're definitely a rare case as far as your entity attachment. And I was like, well, thanks. That doesn't really give me any clarification. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm possessed or anything like that. You know what I mean? I don't think I am. But I do think the entity tries to attach to me. And I think it sometimes it'll try to try to affect my reasoning and affect my thinking. And that's kind of where you have to really know yourself. You have to really be you have to really be sharp with because you have to really question some of the thoughts that entities put in your head. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, Leo. And we'll go back to this in a second, Jerry. But at some point, I want to touch on this, Leo. It seems like entities have really mastered the human subconscious, whether it's demons, entities, archons, whatever, alien negative entities. It seems like they have the human brain pattern map to a precise manner where they can just tap into our brains and put thoughts into our head no matter what. I think this happens with a lot of people. I just happen to be one of the people that can sense it. I can feel it, I feel bad for a lot of the people out in the world that can't feel it, but I mean, I don't know.
That's how you fight them, by first acknowledging that you have a foreign entity that plants thoughts in your head that may seem like your intuition, but they're not guiding you towards the right direction for you. And basically, when you notice them, this is where your immunity system starts getting rid of them. So maybe that's how you got rid of yours. Because before that, the immunity system does not recognize them as a foreign body. And just so you know, immunity system is not just 2 phases like humans think. It has 5 phases, and the 4th one is spiritual. The
your auric field, right? Like entities can enter your body through your auric field, right? I would guess.
Yeah. So the genes are here maybe even longer than humanity itself. So yeah, they know humanity very well.
Wow, that's something to think about. So sorry, Geri, go back to what you were saying. You were telling your story about the talented gift and the satanic connection and the Minotaur rolling around the. I remembered everything.
Yeah, so the experience culminated with I was studying for a capitals quiz in around 5th grade, and I had I had a pack of flash cards that were index cards that were brand new from the store, right? And I'm writing whatever, Massachusetts, flip it, Boston, and then just whatever. Obviously I knew that capital because I was from there, but you know what I mean? It was just whatever. It was my homework. And as I went to pull another card, it was really intensely scrawled writing. Up to this point, whenever the entity wrote to me, it wrote with really light handwriting, but at that point it was scrawled open your window now, something like that. And it was in caps, and it was thick pencil. And so I screamed. I showed my parents, and they didn't know what to make of it because, again, I don't know why. As I was a kid, I just kept going to my parents for help. But I didn't. I never opened the window, and then it stopped. And Leo, I told you about this experience, and you had an explanation.
There was, by the way, before Leo answers, I'll just tell you, I think someone from your channel or one of your fans, Geri, she wanted to let you know. She said, sorry your parents didn't believe you. She said, let me just go back to the comments. She was like, Geri, I'm so sorry your parents didn't believe you. She says, I'm thankful my mother believed me about my stuff when I was a kid. So, I mean, I think that's common. Our parents grew up in a different time, Our parents grew up in taught not to believe in that stuff. So, yeah.
I mean, my birth mother molested me as a child, so she wasn't all there herself. So, ultimately, I think, we can learn from these experiences, and maybe Leo, you could talk a little bit about ways to defend oneself against these shadow people, dark entities.
Well, first of all, when you're seeing someone acting strange, while they do understand how human psyche works, they are incapable of feeling most of the emotions. So, when you see fake emotions that they don't really feel, happiness, passion, despair, vengeance, they don't feel those, so they just imitate them, and they're imitating them badly. So first of all, avoid contact with a person like that, because they can spread through contact. Another way, that if you're feeling off, if you're alone in the forest, forests aren't scary. There is a reason why we are afraid of the dark, because they operate in the dark. They don't operate under sunlight. They are very sensitive to radiation. So if you feel off and you feel scared for no apparent reason, there is a reason. Leave the place. Also, when lights are flickering, that's them as well. They're not doing it on purpose. It's just because they have a very high kinetic value, and so they just destabilize the environment that they're in. One of the ways to prevent them from entering your house is leaving a door or a window open. It closes it is disrupting the cosmic cycle, which is they need it because they teleport from place to place. They don't walk. Another way is to keep things asymmetric, so they cannot conjure objects. They usually conjure mirrors, so make mirrors not symmetric.
I got a question about that, Leo. What do they use mirrors as portals? And but what we're all looking into right now, a computer, is that a black mirror that they can use?
No, they need an actual mirror that is not moving, because a computer is asymmetrical.
Okay.
But they don't use it as portals. They conjure those objects, and then they use it to amplify their psychic influence.
Yeah.
Just like MK Ultra using heavy metals.
Yeah.
Other stuff. Avoid putting china, like the material, in open places, because for some reason they like to conjure china. China balls are not the problem. Usually, the ones that are closed. I cannot think of anything else right now.
Is that because China is made out of bone, Leo? Dead matter?
Maybe. I don't really why. It's just something that we know. Oh, by the way, people used to say that sage works, so they cut up to the trick. It doesn't work anymore. Also, you can use religion in order to cast them away. It's just that don't kind of count only on religion, because what really drives them away is your faith that you have something that puts them in danger, and then they just go on easier prey. So it's about faith. It's about your faith, not about the religion itself. So if you put too much attention on religious objects like a cross or something, they're going to just laugh at you. It's about faith that you have something that puts them in danger.
Yeah, so I had an
Read minds.
experience. I had an experience where I was sort of meditating, and one was coming in my mind's eye, and it was like an eye with sort of like cloud surrounding it, and as I tried to cast it away, it just got bigger and bigger with every time I cast it away. And finally, I just said in my mind, I control you. And then it disappeared. I don't know if that's helpful for people, but just really like setting that boundary within your own mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So back to this whole thing about the whole towns and we'll finish up soon, because we've been going about an hour and 13 minutes. But I don't mind. I'm it's a rainy night here in Pittsburgh. It's a perfect night to be telling stories like this, because it's like actually thunderstorming outside. Tonight. I didn't know if you guys could hear it earlier, but anyway. This TON thing, another thing my friend Michelle would break down. I don't know if you ever heard of this, Jerry or Leo, is like the seals, the city seals and the state seals. Like my friend Michelle told me that you can basically like break down a city seal, and like she breaks it down like hardcore esoteric. Like she says like a city or state seal can tell you like where rituals are taking place, what kind of rituals are taking place, entrances to deep underground military bases, what cults or Freemasonry groups are active in that town. I mean, it's like I'm like, holy shit, this is all on a state seal. I'm like this. I'm like,
it's true.
Sorry, go ahead,
It's
Leo.
true.
Sorry.
It's true, and it actually was used against them because it basically mapped out all of the tunnels in the United States, and so it was very easy to find them and
Wow.
destroy them.
Do you think they're being destroyed now, Jerry or Leo? Do you think that we're putting up a good fight against this, like satanic Luciferian system or whatever?
Yeah. There's still about 50 tunnels left in Pennsylvania, about 300 tunnels left in New York. There are over 5,000 in California, over 10,000 in North and South Carolina, and also over 10,000 in Michigan and Wisconsin. And other than that, the rest is clean.
Okay, this next question is going to be specifically for you, Leo, because like I really want to know what you think about this. Like, and it's a controversial one. Trump. Okay, like a lot of people, some people like hate him, some people are for him. I voted for him, but I'm like, I don't really like war, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like 50-50 right now. I'm like, but like, do you think he's the wild card? Do you think he was meant to change things? Do you think he was meant here to do good, bad, in between? Are you 50? Where are you at with the whole Trump narrative?
He keeps telling his administration, and nobody believes him because he just kind of makes a joke out of it, that he has a little alien whispering in his ear. Absolutely true. There is a Pleiadian alien helping him make the decisions, and he is in contact with NGT, which is I'm the ambassador of NGT, and so most of his actions and decisions are for the good of mankind. He is a very egotistical person, so some of these decisions are specifically helping him, but no one's perfect. And he is thinking about mankind in general. The problem is that not all of his administration is going on with him in the same line of thought, and usually when he makes a decision and it turns to be something fucked up, it's thanks to the rest of the people around him that are much more egotistical and control freaks than he is.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's never going to back out of this war because, just like you said, he's so egotistical. I don't think he would ever accept defeat or surrender or anything like that. You know what I mean? I mean, hopefully he does have the greater good in mind. I hope. It's so hard for me to comment on geopolitics because I'm like, man, I don't want to take a side. I just want to kind of stay neutral and just get different opinions on it and let people come on and say what they want about it. I'm done taking sides because every time I take a side, like, I either lose people or I gain people, but someone ends up getting mad. So I'm just like, I'm just going to stay neutral and let the world play out the way it plays out, and that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I'll just tell you, look for clues, and also always ask why it happens. Like, look at other layers in it. And like one of the best clues I can give you is that that the Khazarian mafia are Jews.
But I heard they're pretending to be Jews. I heard they're not real
right,
Jews.
They're not really Jews. But they look like the actual portrait of a Jew. So the big nose, white skin. So now just pull up an image of the Ayatollah Khomeini and tell me if this is an Arab or a Jew.
Well, Arabs have big noses too, right? I mean,
not like the Khazarians.
Okay, they have like huge. Okay, I got you there. Yeah,
it looks like Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's wow. Holy shit, that's interesting. Like, do you think the Khazarians were the Tatarians? Like were they originally the Tatarians and like they?
No, they fought each other.
And why do you think they've done like there's been a concerted effort to wipe out the Tatarian or wipe out the history of the Tatarian civilization?
Well, they were more advanced than we are today, and humanity's overlords are not willing to admit that because they basically annihilated every scientist that challenged them. And so the reason that humanity is so primitive today is thanks to them. So they're not willing to admit that they fucked up, basically. Because Pleiadians went and visited Tartaria and Nikola Tesla a lot, not because they were probably friends with him, but they went to visit him a lot because they learned from him. We did not invent wireless electricity. We copied it from Nikola Tesla.
I thought so. Yeah. And they say
humanity doesn't have wireless electricity. And that's a shot in the foot for themselves.
Wow. Wow. Well, we've been going about an hour and 20 minutes. Geri, is there anything else you wanted to cover with Lio or anything else you wanted to cover tonight before we finish up? And thanks, guys. This was awesome. This was amazing. This was really fun.
Yeah, always a pleasure, and would love to come back on with you and Lio. I'm right now dropping in the chat the work of Chuck Swindoll Jr. I did an interview with him. He's really an amazing researcher. He's aligned with natural law as well. And he did a whole series called The God Eaters about the Khazarian Mafia. And about the controlling. Pardon?
I'd like to read that or watch that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, so they're called the God Eaters because during child sacrifice they eat the pineal glands of children.
Oh God,
that part was taken out of YouTube, but you can check out his Rumble channel, which I dropped in the chat. I don't know if I'm being censored. But if you just type in Chuck Swindoll Jr., I don't even know if I put it in the chat, if it's even going to show up in the YouTube chat. But yeah, so he is a son of a huge sort of Christian pastor, evangelical pastor, and he had a spiritual awakening through. Anyway, so he's a really great researcher, and I learned a lot about from his work. Also, if people want to check out the work of Fritz Springmeier, he does a lot of work on the sort of like satanic control systems. And, going back to this idea of Trump, and sort of political sides, when you start to see the bigger structure, you realize it's all the same.
Yeah, I've always said to people, it's like I got kind of convinced of like vote and the last because people were convincing me that Trump was outside of the system and this and that. But like, here's one thing I've always said, and I and people can go back on my shows from 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and like I was saying this then, like I've always said that there's a shadow government that controls this country and that controls the world. A lot of people talk about it's the 13 families, the Rothschilds. There's like the Nazis, the Khazarians, the Black nobility, the Club of Rome. I mean, all the above, right? The Fourth Reich, like et cetera, the Muslim Brotherhood. They could all be working together. But I mean, it seems like there's an external force above them, above all those organizations that they report to that's non-human. And I think it's beyond a shadow government at this point. I think that whatever controls our reality is absolutely non-human. And I don't think it has humanity's best interest in mind. But then we get people like Lio on here, like where he, I believe him that like he's Pleiadian and that like his people have the best interest for humanity. So it's like, I don't know, it's like, I don't, I want to hope that like things are being cleaned up and things are, going to turn around for humanity too, I don't know.
I will say this. It's really important to remember that not all humans are the same and not all Pleiadians are the same. A lot of abductees have talked about how they saw Nordics along with Greys in their abductee experience. I've learned a little bit about the history of the sort of civil war within the Pleiadian culture. But the point that I'm making is just because someone's from the Pleiadian doesn't mean they're going to be kind-hearted, like benevolent like Lio is, right? And the only reason why I know Leo's kind-hearted is because I've had many experiences, and I'm inviting humanity to get to know him as well as an ambassador. So, because yeah. Anyway, do you want to talk more about that, Leo, or add to that?
Sorry, I was just trying to publish the contact information in the link, and it just doesn't work. So again, please ask the question.
You know what? It's so weird. Like, let me see if I can type it in there. Which link do you want to post? Like, I don't like someone did a show with me earlier a few days ago. The people who did the show on James Rink, they said that they weren't able to leave comments in my comment section. I think this has something to do with YouTube, honestly, and the fact that they've censored me before, and like, I don't know, but like, or like, if you say the name out loud, like either me or one of my moderators will put it in the chat right now. Like, go ahead. What is it, Leo?
Yeah.
I just sent you. It's like I just my Telegram user and our channel, the Narrow NGT one, which also has the same podcast there. So like if someone wants to contact me privately or go to, we might start podcasting soon as well. So I mean, if someone wants to contact or further have questions.
Yeah, so I'll just say it out loud. And Rob, most of all, since you've been censored by platforms like the one we're on, you're on the right track if comments in your own guests and you're aren't able to share information, right? So we're on the pulse, and we're on the pulse because we're talking about equivalentics. We're sharing an occulted form of simplified quantum mechanics with humanity that's not being taught on this planet. Like, that's kind of going to that's going to change the power differential in terms of knowledge when humanity starts learning this stuff. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's we started a YouTube. We're gonna mirror this interview and all the interviews we do with you, Rob, as well as others, at NERRONGT on YouTube. Leo's Telegram name is I wanted to say it in Spanish, at NZ1_NZ6. I am at freedom@soundpath.org for my email. Leo and I created a joint email called NGT Narrow, NERRO, NGTNERRO @gmail.com. And yeah, that's how people can stay in contact with us.
All right, awesome, guys. Well, you guys have a spot on this show anytime you want. Like, I enjoy having you guys on. You guys are a wealth of information, and I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you, Leo, and thank you, Geri. And I think I'm off tomorrow, guys, and Saturday, so I don't know what I'm going to have going on tomorrow. But I'll do something. If I don't have a show scheduled, I'll do a call-in show. So we'll do a call-in show tomorrow, guys. So yeah. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, and thank you, everybody. And